A concept I talk about all the time is this idea of an everyday watch. It's one that could be versatile enough to be worn in casual or in more dressy scenarios while also being durable enough to handle the day-to-day. And when it comes to the price range around $1,000 to say $1,500, Germany immediately springs to mind with some of their production of many solid offerings of this style. So in this video, we're going to be looking at two of my favorite German watches on the more robust end of the everyday spectrum with the Mühle Glashütte Panova and the Sinn 556i. In this video, when we're covering these two watches, we'll first start with the essential characteristics, an overview and the major points for each watch, and then ultimately at the end, talk about each of these watches and also kind of address the competition and which one is best for which type of individual. Let's jump into it. All right guys, now before we jump into this video, definitely check out a blog looking at some of the best minimalist-oriented watches on the entire market. We have several dozen watches mentioned in that blog. Check it out down below on Baldassarre.com. In addition to that, definitely check out the new releases on the website. Just go to the new releases section and check out what we just got in stock. So compared to something like a dive watch, this idea of an everyday watch is not going to be as concrete as a concept to nail down, as this is not a universal term with a common set of criteria. But to me, I kind of keep it a bit more general, and what I'm referring to are watches with a versatile look, legibility in mind, capable water resistance of at least 50 meters, but ideally 100 meters, and could be capable of taking on nearly every circumstance. I find that Germany produces some of the best options for watches of this type in the price range that we're gonna be looking at today, but just a couple points just kind of off the top here. I want to address some of the elephants in the room, first with being that I would have loved to include a third watch, and the one I was primarily thinking about was Damasco with the DS30. However, I tried so hard to get my hands on one of these watches, they basically have no ability to give out any pieces for loan, and it seemed like they're really behind on production. So unfortunately, I was not able to actually include it in this video, but I will just kind of throw that out there as an honorable mention. Bit frustrating, tried my best, but couldn't do it. Also, another watch from Germany with the Nomus Club Campus. Now this watch I just felt like wasn't the most appropriate comparison versus the two tool watches, so I decided to just opt with looking at these two watches as honestly some of my two favorites when it comes to tool watches from Germany. First with the Sinn 556, which I have been a huge proponent of, and then the Mühle Glashütte Panova. So diving into the overview portion of this video and looking at a watch that I have not talked about as much compared to the 556 on this channel, we'll first look at the Mühle Glashütte Panova. So this is positioned as Mühle Glashütte's entry-level option at around $1,000. So if you're unfamiliar with this brand, Mühle Glashütte was founded in 1869 in Glashütte, Germany, and has been in constant operation under 5 generations of family ownership. For much of its existence, Mühle was known for its production of instruments such as developing motorcycle speedometers for companies like BMW, as well as having a strong reputation for marine chronometers. It was not until 1995, though, when one of Mühle's key shipyard clients called for the brand to develop a mechanical wristwatch that could withstand the tough conditions aboard their ships. This spawned a new focus for the brand, and today, Mühle has a broad collection of watches built around utility, especially in the marine environment. However, the other part that this brand does well is their development of robust tool watches such as their Terrasports, 29ers, and their most entry-level option, the Panovas. Starting with the case and wear of the Mühle Glashütte Panova, we have a finely brushed finish executed on the entirety of the case, a look that is in keeping with this watch's utilitarian design concept. The Panova case is straightforward, with simple 90-degree angles at the lugs paired with a rounded case shape and a narrow step bezel that adds some visual interest, but in a subtle way. A screw-down crown signed with the MG windmill logo adds further day-to-day durability and grants this watch a more than adequate 100 meters of water resistance. On the wrist, the 40mm by 47.5mm case offers presence without overstepping the bounds for its size, wearing rather true to its 40mm case size. The dial is going to take up the majority of the space through the effect of that narrow bezel and visual real estate occupied by that central dial surface. Working in the watch's favor is the 10mm case thickness, reasonable lug to lug, and the comfort of the well-executed NATO style strap. And if the somewhat loud orange and black look of this NATO just isn't for you, this watch is also available on a more subdued leather NATO, and the mass appealing 20mm lug width means there are plenty of other options, while of course being more than equipped to take on some third-party candidates. So one of the leading aspects about the Panova line is going to be the dials. So this model we have here exhibits a gray sunburst dial with orange accents, but it is important to note that this line, similar to that of the eccentric mother of pearl dials with the 556, can have a bit of fun with the crazier dial colors like the blue, the red, and green. Resting beneath a flat sapphire crystal, the primary dial surface is a metallic sunburst gray color. This model is by far the most understated of all of this model family. However, it is probably the most appropriate when matching up with the 556. Indices in this case are round lume plots resting on printed orange linear markers with printed minute markings in between. Hands are a blunted lume baton style paired with a stick seconds hand, also executed in orange, and dial text is low key with Mhle's signature at the 12 and Automatique at the 6, just to remind you, if it wasn't clear already, that this is a German-made watch. Now flipping the watch over, we have a closed case back, affixed with 5 tiny screws, features simple engraving and the protection for the movement within Selleda's SW200. One of the areas where Mhle really separates itself though from others in the price category is the careful attention to detail the brand pays to its movements. Now this SW200, despite being hidden from view, is not just any other simple drop in movement. Mhle's SW200 features a nicely machined finished rotor, which also includes some hollowed points, a branded engraving, and perlage finishing beneath the balance. However, there is a proprietary element to this movement with the woodpecker neck regulator that was patented by Mhle in 2003. This reinterpreted design from the more popular swan neck design provides similar sensitive adjustment while assisting in the resistance against shock with a much more secure balance assembly. Speaking anecdotally to this particular example, this watch kept time around 5 seconds per day on average, so very good performance out of this example. And in terms of general specs, we're looking at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz. Hacking and hand winding is present here, so hacking stop in the second hand when you pull the crown out to the farthest position. It has a power reserve of 38 hours. Now moving over to the Sinn 556, a watch that I have been a huge proponent of, covering on this channel quite a bit before, and this is just one of my favorite just do-it-all tool watches in the price range for around $1,500 on the H-Link bracelet. Now this watch is packaged as the entry-level option for Sinn's current catalog, offering all the function with its specifications. That said, with rising prices on these, the landscape in which these are positioned are changing, so we can discuss that idea just a bit more in this video as well. Speaking briefly to Sinn as a brand, the German manufacturer was founded back in 1961 by German flight instructor Helmut Sinn. Over the years, Sinn has garnered up a much-deserved favorable reputation amongst watch enthusiasts, pilots, and adventurers for their well-constructed watches, built with an emphasis on durability, as well as their high-tech case treatments and levels of internal testing. Sinn's relative attainability and impressive attention to detail have led to cult-like following for this brand, as well as an ever-growing collection of excellent tool watches with seldom seen features for the price category. Looking at the case and wearing experience presented by the 556, it features a fully satin finish featuring small crown guards protecting the proportionally large signed screw-down crown at the 3, with some great crown threading making engagement feel as if you're handling a luxury watch when setting the time. Case architecture is again restrained, and like the Panova, similarly equipped with sharp angles at the lugs, generally rounded central case, and a step bezel. In terms of water resistance, the Sinn does outdo the Mhle with 200 meters of legitimate water resistance that would make the 556 a more than capable dive watch if it was not for the lack of an elapsed time bezel. With a central case construction measuring at 38.5 millimeters and a lug-to-lug of 45.5 millimeters, the 556 demonstrates one of the reasons for its popularity: compact dimensions that still offer presence. The central case and dial are not insignificant, but the lug-to-lug makes this piece increasingly more compatible for smaller wrists, while still looking appropriate on those on the larger end of the spectrum. In terms of comfort, the 556 is also slim at 11 millimeters, just a bit thicker than that of the Panova, but the real game changer is with the H-Link bracelet, which is going to add some denseness while being sturdy in its construction, with the only downside being the oversized, kind of rattling clasp. Now without the bracelet, you can get this watch a bit closer to that of the Panova in terms of price, just south of $1,300, but at the time of recording this video, apparently there's going to be a scheduled price increase on these again, so I'm not sure where that's gonna fall, but to me, the bracelet is certainly worth going for in my opinion. Sinn's history with pilot watches becomes all the more evident when taking a look at the 556 dial, which is distinguished by lume rectangular printed hour markers with simple minute markings in between. Sword hands evoking the feel of aviation instruments manage time-telling duties at the center, with the central portion executed in the same inky black color as the dial's primary surface, giving the hands the effect of floating over the dial. Dial text is also extremely minimal, with the only Sinn's word mark at 12 and Automatic again in German at the 6. In contrast to the Panova, the Sinn features a date window with subtle faceting edges, allowing a clear view of the white on black date wheel beneath at the 3 o'clock position. However, one aspect of the 556 that helps elevate this dial is its crystal and the use of coating. Like the Panova, the 556 comes with a flat sapphire crystal, but this one featuring anti-reflective coating on both sides. This helps tremendously in the legibility of this piece, and at a certain angle, this watch looks like you can literally just go in and grab the hands yourself. It's one of the better executions of double AR that I have found, making this the pinnacle of legibility and contrast at every angle. This double AR treatment can create possibilities though for small surface level scratches, but I've had no issue in my own personal experience owning this watch in my time with wear. Turning the watch over, we have an exhibition caseback allowing clear view of the SW200 shared by both this watch and the aforementioned Panova, but in this case included with a lower level of in-house modification compared to that of the Mhle with their added woodpecker neck regulator. Still, Sinn does opt for some up finishing with a golden color Sinn signed rotor, features blued screws, and a fine grade finish across the bridges. Add to this that every movement inside a Sinn is going to be using a higher grade, a top grade, and always highly regulated, often also receiving some up finish and upped anti-magnetic spec. My own example here runs consistently at only a couple seconds off from perfect time over a course of 24 hours. Again, this one operates in the same manner, 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz, features hacking and hand winding, and also comes with a 38-hour power reserve. All right, so now to talk a little bit about which watch is right for you, but also just addressing the competition. And by competition, I'm mostly referring to Germany, because if I open this up to Japanese watches as well as Swiss watches, we're gonna be here all day. But just looking at the 2 ones that I would probably consider here, with the Damasco with the DS30, and then also with the Nomos Club Campus. Now, the Nomos I think is just going for a completely different appeal. But with the Damasco, I would say it's right in alignment with what these watches are going for at the end of the day. Tool watches that are built with good specifications, and in a lot of ways, the Damasco is almost delivering something more. It's really just frustrated the fact that I can't get my hand on this watch and wanting to cover it a bit more, but I'll just throw it out there as an honorable mention. If you want a lot of the elements that the Sinn 556 is delivering with a little bit larger case in terms of that lug-to-lug dimension while getting some up treatment with the case, I mean, there's a lot to like there with what the Damasco is delivering. And Damasco as a brand was actually producing cases for Sinn in the past. So there's some true reputation behind what they are doing. But now getting into the Mühle Panova versus the 556. Now I wanna address the 556 because I truly love this watch. I've been very much about mentioning this watch as much as possible just because I just loved Sinn, what they're doing. Moving on from the Sinn 104 was probably one of my biggest regrets. I just love Sinn as a brand, and it's now just really become almost the epitome of what I look for in a watch in a lot of ways. No status elements associated with it. It's just a really well-constructed watch, tool watch roots, and I love just the Germanic utilitarian approach to what it's going after. It's just a watch built just for an intended purpose and nothing more. It's not trying to be something more, and I just simply love that. But that considered, the Sinn 556 is not what it once was, unfortunately, in regards to value. It's still a good watch, but in terms of maybe the best watch for the money, which I think for some time where this thing was priced around just about $1,000, it was very hard to dispute this watch as being a no-brainer if you did like the style. Now, I do think there's still a lot going for this watch, and in terms of this matchup and what I would say is probably going to be most appropriate, if you just want an all-arounder in terms of a watch, 200 meters of water resistance, you're talking about a great bracelet, which I think is one of the #1 reasons why I still will personally give this a nod over the Damasco. Kind of more speaking with my heart there than my true brain, because I just like this watch. But that H-Link I think is fantastic. I love the look of it. It's also very substantial in its feel. It has some denseness to it on the wrist, so it just adds a bit more presence to it. And I just like the overall layout and design of this one. The legibility, I would say, is much better. Probably one of the best contrasts on a dial that you're going to find. So this is going to be the watch that if you just want the entry level, you're maybe somebody that likes Sinn as a brand and just want a German watch that epitomizes just the do-it-all nature, and maybe you don't necessarily like the Damasco and want the upside of the H-Link bracelet, this one makes a ton of sense for you, but it's starting to make a little bit less sense than maybe it did in the past with the increases of the price. Now moving over to the Panova from Mhle. In regards to what that watch is going for, I think you could probably position it very similar to the Damasco when you're talking about value. Maybe not as much from the case treatment, but more about what they're doing with their movements and just the construction of that piece while still being suitable in, I would say, a variety of different situations, although maybe not as versatile just given the orange accents and what's happening there. But why I like the Mhle Mhle here, and why I think it's a really nice middle ground, is you have the Nomos Club Campus, and say like that new orange version that just came out, and then you have something like a Sinn 556 or Damasco, which is true utilitarian types of just aesthetic with what it's going for. But maybe say you want something in between, something that can be really do-it-all watch while also maybe having some fun and flair with it as well. I think this Panova is exactly representing that middle ground between those two watches. Utilitarian at its roots, but also factoring in some fun flair with it as well. You're getting that SW200 that's going to be modified with their regulator neck that's going to be proprietary to Mhle and what they're doing. Nice finished case, pretty straightforward. Wearing dimensions are going to be larger than the Sinn 556, so closer to being true to that 40mm case size, so just keep that in mind, but still should work on a variety of wrists out there. Strap options for here, when you're talking about the factory straps, I think are a little bit crazy and wild. I'd go for something a little bit more plain, so that the dial can do more of the talking rather than the strap and the dial kind of just fighting it out for real estate. I don't like when straps try to take away from what's going on with the dial. I'd pick something that's a bit more complementary, but when you're talking about $1,000, I think this is a pretty compelling package for a do-it-all type of piece, and one that probably doesn't get mentioned enough, while still kind of combining those elements that come with the Nomos Club Campus while bringing in elements from the Sinn and Damasco side of things. So that would be kind of how I would position that. But all right, guys, that is my video looking at these two watches in more detail. I think you guys know I like watches of this style. Increasingly, I think a lot of people just assume that I love just dress pieces, but this has become increasingly more of what I've been drawn to now, like the Sinn 556, and I love Mhle and what they're developing, Damasco, and of course Nomos is kind of being that window into what other elements of what Germany does very well when it comes to the world of watchmaking. But if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Are there other watches and just kind of comparisons like this that you'd like to see in the future? Please leave comments down below. Always like to just hear what you guys want to see, so we can try to make that happen. Also, definitely go check out TeddyBaldassarre.com as well. Not an authorized dealer of Sinn, but we are an authorized dealer of Mühle Glashütte, so definitely go check that out. Also, if you want to stay up to date with the content, be sure to follow on Instagram as well and see some cool photos of watches in the process. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.